Christy. Call the meeting to order. We will run through some administrative topics quickly here. Nothing has changed on our meeting rules for public comment. We, of course, invite public comment on all the topics we've discussed. And what we do is encourage the comments to be within 1 minute time frame per speaker on each topic. And if you'd like to share additional thoughts, to please email those to the committee email address. And the committee email address is the best way to communicate with the committee. Let me quick read our committee charge. I'd like to go over this at the beginning of each meeting to keep focus on what it is we are charged to do. The Bike and Walkways Committee is hereby established to consider ways to provide safe areas for biking and walking. The Board of Selectmen believes that these activities should be available seasonally and year-round, as they are an important means of local transportation, are popular activities in the town, and promote good health. The Bike and Walkways Committee is charged with the following tasks. 1, to work with the Cape Cod National Seashore, the towns of Provincetown and Truro, and the Cape Cod Commission to establish the continuation of a bike trail northward into Provincetown. And 2, to prepare a plan for future bike and walking routes throughout the town of Wellfleet. So that is what we are doing. And near-term committee calendar, the meeting calendar. We've been holding meetings bi-weekly. Christy, do you want to review what we decided at the last meeting?
Sure. Well, I think the plan was simply to continue our bi-weekly meetings until Memorial Day, at which point we can reassess.
Thank you. Okay. We will do that. As we get further into our discussion, I would like to propose that we add one additional meeting next week. Is a preview as we prepare to go to the select board with our analysis plan. So, Christy, let me turn this over to you next as far as the approval of minutes. Oh, you're muted. There you go.
Oh, yeah. I move that we approve the minutes from the March 12th meeting.
I second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, approved.
So Pete, I just want to clarify, so we'll add the additional meeting, but then we'll meet again the next week, or will we go bi-weekly from next week?
Let's talk about it when we get down to our agenda. What I'll propose as we get further in is to simply add a meeting, but not to change the rest of our meeting schedule. So, okay.
Thanks.
On to the discussion for the bikeway route through Wellfleet to Truro. First item is our analysis project milestone schedule. And in a nutshell, what we talked about at the last meeting is to, as we pursue our overall game plan of an analysis to take to the select board with recommendations, that we first provide them a copy of our analysis methodology, our overall analysis plan. And we have discussed doing that at the select board's April 6th meeting. The only change there is that I had a select board member privately tell me yesterday that their meeting schedule may be in flux. So whether it's technically going to be April 6th or not, I think if we, I recommend that we keep that as our goal to be prepared to present our plan to the select board. The actual date of their meeting may move to a later date, but that should still be our target. Any discussion? Okay, and as we discussed, we will, having presented the overall analysis plan to the select board in April, presumably April 6th, then conduct the analysis and be reporting results of the analysis in June to the select board. So we had gone over those before, but I wanted to make sure that we recap them here. Any additional thoughts on schedule? Okay. Moving on to the next item, stakeholder involvement. So we have a lot of communication that's ongoing right now. Lance, I'll let you talk to that as we get into the analysis plan update, except I'll just mention a few. We've been in active communication with Cape Cod National Seashore, the Seashore Superintendent and staff members. That's been very productive. They've been providing information in addition to technical feedback. They've also been providing other written feedback to the town. It's been very positive communication, and we're learning a lot from it. We've also been in communication with the Cape Cod Commission. That's going well. Yeah. And both of those are active. And then, of course, we have communication with various town departments, including the police department, the Department of Public Works. We're engaging fire and rescue and others in town. So then, of course, there are the state agencies. We've reached out to both the DCR and to DOT. Lance, I'm going to turn to you for analysis plan update.
We've gotten such good feedback from the National Seashore and the CCC. We're incorporating that into our analysis. The analysis methodology, or the stage where we are, is we're down to specifying the criteria as derived from the objectives of the goals, and we're in very good shape there, and we're able to incorporate. This feedback comes at exactly the right time for us to incorporate it. They've, unlike many things that happen, they clearly have read what we've written and responded on a line-by-line item. So it's been very helpful. But we're in very good shape in terms of the criteria.
And the fact is, they bring an expertise to this that is refreshing to see. I mean, and their interest and the attention they're paying to the details of what they're reviewing is
Right.
promising. Yeah. Glad to hear their review, and that you know, as we've developed the analysis plan, I mean, there are some words that have been thrown around to describe it: rigorous, comprehensive, objective, systematic, and those words all mean something. And I think it's earned, based on comment, the respect of the reviewers. I mean, those words all mean something. Rigorous, we're doing a very thorough study. Comprehensive, which I think is a key area for this study, where we're including all aspects of the issue. It is quite detailed. We're looking for precise answers. It's objective in the sense that our study is not influenced by personal opinions. None of us would be on this committee if we didn't have personal opinions about what a good bikeway in Wellfleet should look like and what it should achieve, what it should provide to the community. And therefore, it's very important that we, in order to be rigorous, comprehensive, detailed, that we remain objective as we do the study. And then finally, we've used the word systematic to describe what we're doing. And the idea is that we're approaching this with a fixed plan in mind, and that we're being very methodical in our approach, so that it will stand the test of scrutiny, and is one that is both transparent and in which the public can have confidence. So thank you, everyone, for all the contributions to the plan. And Lance, thank you for pulling this together as far as collecting a lot of inputs, a lot of complex inputs, and we're synthesizing those into a single document. So we'll be present, and this is of course what we'll be presenting to the select board in early April. The analysis update, or excuse me, the alternative routes. Next topic, the database. Christy, you've been working on the database. Lance is there with the catcher's mitt. You want to go over how we are looking with that, please? Oh, by the way, Rebecca, could you keep an eye out for any people who are waiting to join the meeting, please?
Yeah, what will pop up where that I need to see? I haven't done this before, so letting people
know. So the thing is you have to have host duties in order to see if there's someone. So do you have Pete, when you look, let's see, we've got Pete as the host. Rebecca, you are a co-host.
Yes.
So you will see someone pop up. You'll hear it. And then you'll see that right now you can see there are 8 participants. So if the number goes to 9, then you'll know also. That's another way to know.
Will a message pop up or just the noise?
Just the noise. You can also, if you want to click on my 3 dots, you can also make me co-host if that helps. I do it every day for work, but you'll know.
Can you find that? You see the 3 dots?
I see the 3 dots, but
you can do
record local files, a lot of multi-pin. It doesn't allow me to make
the 3 dots so when you go into my picture, it's a different set of 3 dots.
I see it, and I'm going to click on it right now. Okay. You are now a co-host. So now we have 3 of us who are looking for anybody who'd like to enter. And apologies at the last meeting if there's anybody who's on the meeting who attempted at our last meeting. There was a bit of a comm-link failure, and there was no audible signal that somebody was trying to join the meeting. I don't know where how that occurred, but at any rate, we had a couple of people who were outside the meeting who couldn't get in, and of course, extended apologies afterward. But of course, we also had a very brief meeting last time. So, okay, I think we're set. Right, we've got 3 people now looking for attendees, invitees. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks. Sorry. Back to the agenda here. The analysis, the alternative routes database.
So I have the database basically complete. What I'm ready for is to work with someone. I would love to have one session working with a second pair of eyes. I'm just finding myself at that point of wanting to be completely objective and unbiased, but then I'm also hitting this, but I also want to be logical. So just trying to figure out a few different connecting points. I wanted to put them all in, and as I'm going along, I'm realizing, so we could be going back and forth between Old Kings Highway and the utility lines, power lines. You could just be switching back and forth every intersection. So I had only been putting the segments in a logical direction. And I realize now, I think I need to have the segments going also away from our logical direction if we're going to be linking back and forth between these multiple trails. Does this question make sense?
A bit. Let me see if I can interpret it a little bit. I think what you're saying is that as our analysis methodology has evolved, we are now focused on segments of trails, and the end-to-end alternatives are composed of those various segments. And so we're going to be doing a lot of the analysis at a segment level. And there are many segments that may or may not be part of a particular trail, but they're all intertwined, and you want to make sure that we've included all of them and where their nodes, how those segments intersect. And Lance, yes.
Yeah. And I think even further, that's absolutely correct. Christy, I think the thing to do is to put a segment, say Long Pond Road, if there's a segment of that could go east, and then it could join and go west, put it in twice.
Going in opposite directions.
Right, so the start and end would reverse. I mean, they would change. So anytime you have a segment where it can go both ways, put it in twice.
Okay.
And you know, what would help would be to put in another column, if you could, called direction.
Mm-hmm.
And from the start of that segment to the end, pick one of two letters combinations, or, you know, north, northeast, east, southeast, south, southwest, west, or northwest. One of those 8, if you'd put in as the direction, meaning from the start to the end, then that will be really clear. But we do need that other
Okay.
column.
Mhm.
You clearly can do that because you did it the other day. It's looking
Yeah.
good. I'm
Yeah.
really excited about getting this far on it.
Yeah. Well, that's
And although in the,
helpful. So I thought I was on the very end, and then I realized, oh wait, in order to get to Sappaquanish Way from Forest Road, you have to go away from Truro for a minute, and I hadn't put it in that direction, and that's
Right,
when I sort of hit a
right.
little tiny block. So, but that's okay. So I'm going to add another layer,
Yes,
and I'll add the directions in. All right.
thanks.
So
That'll be
keep
perfect.
that's great.
So there's 2 points, adding the direction, but then also repeating the segment.
Those are the two. Yes.
Right,
Perfect.
good, thanks.
and to use in
Mhm.
I'll call it the analysis engine that's being put together, that's an important feature to have to have unidirectional segments.
Right,
Is that correct? Okay.
yes,
Because on the one hand, different levels of this analysis, there's all, of course, the numerical analysis that you're developing, which is coupled with the human element, which is going out and actually surveying these trails, which a number of us have done firsthand, both along various rights of way, whether they're town owned, whether they're utility rights of way, a number of fire roads that traverse the national seashore. Not to stake out a particular favorite route, but rather to become familiar with the wide range of options that are available. But that human element is going to be important as we survey these routes and we document their advantages and or disadvantages,
right,
including grade, a lot of which can be picked up from GIS, but because we have the capability to measure it firsthand, I think there will be some advantage, especially on short distances, to accurately understanding what grade exists, including lateral grade, which is not necessarily going to show up in a contour map. Ned, thoughts on that? I know you've got you're the guy with the tools that I'm thinking of.
Yeah, and I actually just last night got a new Garmin because my older one kept cutting out on me when I was trying to get grade in there, especially the heavily woods area. So this one should do better, and I'm gonna try to go out this weekend and really bang around and get a lot of grade and whatever else I can. Just really check out some of these other trails that I don't know as well.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's just kind of a proof of concept for going out and checking alternatives once they're as they're fully documented and the segments are. But it's great, and I know you've already got years of experience with these trails. You've forgotten more trails than many people know. So
I think I know them all.
You think
Yeah.
you haven't forgotten any of them? I take it back. Okay.
And with regards to Christy, I'd be happy to look at that stuff with you if we maybe talk after the meeting, Christy, and then see what we can I'd be happy to, to be that extra set of eyes, like,
Thank
She
you.
was
I'd
asking.
appreciate it. I'm
Yeah.
ready. I just couple of things, I'll start looking at it and saying, okay, so where's this one supposed to go? And
yeah.
would you go to Route 6? Is it logical? Because I want to be unbiased, but then to say, well, if you're going backwards for a minute to get to Route 6, should I put that in there still or not? Or,
Yeah.
something like the Old Kings Highway segment that goes right to Route 6, like that sort of thing.
Any other comments regarding alternative routes and the database update? Thank you, Christy. Moving on to the GIS tool update. As discussed in the last meeting, we're at this point using ArcGIS, which is the tool that first of all the town uses, but then also the Cape Cod Commission. We have been in discussions with the Cape Cod Commission about a number of data layers they have available. First of all, we've got access to ArcGIS through them, but then they've also got multiple data layers that they have agreed to share with us. There are data layers in the town's GIS, which was a starting point for us, mostly dealing with property boundaries, which of course are critical to understand. But also, the normal contours, locations of wetlands and similar natural features. The seashore has GIS information, and we've discussed with them data sharing. Turns out they've already shared their data with the Cape Cod Commission. And so they recommended that Cape Cod Commission is a good central point of contact. However, we will have a feedback loop with the seashore, because as we gain access to data layers from the commission, we'll then be comparing those with the seashore to see if they have any additional input or recommendations after they see the data layers we're using from the commission. But we've had some very, I say, productive discussion with the Cape Cod Commission regarding the data layers they have available, which certainly go beyond what's available on the town GIS, although the town GIS is very important. A number of natural features, but also roadway features that are documented by the Cape Cod Commission. And this will be very useful information for our, as we compare the features of the route segments. Any other discussion here regarding GIS tools?
Yes, it's going to be just such a symbiotic relationship having the GIS. We have the database Christie's working on, and from that we can write programs to generate paths to make sure what all the paths are through the database, through the town. But also within the ArcGIS, there will be the capability, given segments, to find all the paths too. So it has the same power. And we can cross-check then both of our systems, make sure we're on track. Further, the database can be used to start off the ArcGIS with start and end points, and conversely, the ArcGIS can generate export comma-separated strings that we can use to import into Excel. So it's just, we couldn't ask for better than this relationship with the CCC.
Very good. I know in the early days of our preparation here, I had gone to Google Maps to test that system out, a little bit of familiarity with it, but I plotted in about 20 alternative routes that went all different directions, from Route 6 on one side to Ocean View Drive on the other, and everything in between, including a few that had been proposed in the Gull Pond area, et cetera, on the way to Truro. And I had a number of segments all identified, but of course lacked the data layers that we're talking about adding back in here, and data exchange, I think, between, as you say, being able to pull that information into the database you're working with. I think that's going to be very good. So very useful connection with the Cape Cod Commission on this. Okay. Any other discussion on a GIS tool update? Or let me ask, is there any other discussion overall regarding the bikeway route analysis from Wellfleet through Truro? And of course, any public input is welcome. Okay.
Oh, hello. This is
Yes.
Karen.
You're muted.
Yeah, I thought I didn't have control over the mute, but I do. I just wanted to say that you can calculate gradient in GIS using elevation data. You can do it pretty quickly, and then you can also count using network tools. You can also determine where these paths cross and where they cross pathways and stuff like that. So there's a lot of stuff that you can do in GIS that will automate some of the stuff that you might be doing manually, especially the gradients, because it's just basically a geoprocessing it's just like a quick geoprocessing process that can, and then you could do a lot. You can buffer the gradients. You can actually, let's say in one of your segments, you have a gradient that's like over 5%. You can actually identify that and then create a buffer around it so that you can show other people visually where those gradients are. So it's pretty powerful. So there's a lot of stuff that you could still do, automate it, that'll save time and energy. So I just wanted to say that.
Thank you.
Sure.
Pete?
All right. Yes, is there somebody else?
Pete?
Yes.
So I think so I'll give you a couple of thoughts in no particular order. I think I would caution you not to get too caught up in the weeds with the segment analysis. I would encourage you to think in corridors and crossing points, right? There are 3 corridors, one west of Route 6, between Route 6 and the ponds, and between the ponds and the ocean, right? So there are 3 basic corridors. And I think if you focus on that, it really doesn't matter, whether the path goes around Slough Pond or bypass to the left. It really doesn't matter at this juncture. The key thing is to have some sense of how your corridors work up, and then where you're crossing and what the pros and cons of that are. So I think that's one thing. I think the second is to bear in mind that I would encourage you to do an inductive rather than deductive case with the board there. If you give them, here's how we make sausage and let's go down that. I mean, those guys are going to glaze over. I would encourage you to talk in conceptual corridors. We can go kind of this way, that way, right? And I'd encourage you to think of it as a kind of it's a sales rather than an analytical, because it's very difficult for an uninformed third party to form an opinion, right, about, oh, should it go to Kings Highway by the paths or up by Slough Pond? I mean, it's hard to do. So I would encourage you to think in broader terms, sort of broad brush it at this point. So there's that. I'd also encourage you to think about just questions, on some of these paths, it seems to me you have to cross national seashore property. So the questions, are they in or are they out? Because if they're out, there's no point in even discussing it, right? And if they're in, the next question is going to be who's going to pay for it. So I would sort of in the back of my mind think about budget. So that encourages my biases in budgets to go relatively direct to save money. Make the seashore pay for it if we can, but I think you're going to need to bear that. I mean, for me, as you're doing these things, that should be, that would be percolating back in my mind. The third thing, if you're going past private property, like on Forest Road, which to me looks inescapable, I would strongly encourage you to go out and talk to all those homeowners. Those homeowners, there's 7 of them, 6 or 7 homeowners on that stretch. Those homeowners will be at these houses in the next 2 months, cleaning them up for the summer. So that's a good time to go chat with them and see how they feel about it, because you don't want to cold cock them with a concept, you know, after the fact. You'd like to bring them along. What else do I have? Yeah, I'll leave it there. Big picture, specific to generality, not vice versa. Don't forget the budget. Make sure that when you're proposing, you know whether you have the seashore, at least in principle or not, and don't get in a position where you've left critical stakeholders out until after you've gotten a decision.
Thanks for your input.
I have that noted in our minutes. That's great. Thank you.
Peter?
Yes.
Comment. Tom, how are you? Good morning, everyone. Hey, in the meeting with the National Seashore, just for point of clarification, was it more to review your methodology and get input as well as what you'd mentioned, the tools and those kinds of things? Or were you trying to gauge, as Steve had mentioned, maybe their appetite for working with the town to try to potentially get some routes and paths through the National Seashore? So I wanted to ask you that. I saw the VMO that you guys put out. I think Carlstrom commented and you commented. Was that last week that came out? I can't remember who published that. I'm sure you saw that. But anyway, that was my question. One is, was it just the methodology you wanted to review in the tool set, or did you get any feedback in terms of their appetite to work with us? Because I agree with Steve. In the past, when I've talked to them, it's like, well, if anything happens to the seashore, 1, we own it, and 2, we'll probably have to pay for it. So for what that's worth, if you can comment, that'd be great. Thank you.
We're in our discussions with the seashore began as a request for their input on the goals and objectives for a bikeway. And I'm sure you reviewed the goals and objectives in our analysis, and they're comprehensive, and they include the intent is to include the interests of the seashore, and that's the point at which we're engaging them, is to ensure that we include their interests in the analysis, so that they're confident that that this is producing a result that with their input. And that's where our discussions are. They're not, it's not solely regarding tools, and it is a conversation with some granularity to it as we discuss the various goals and objectives that is bearing fruit.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Other discussion regarding the this bikeway study. As we're moving on then to other bikeway issues, there was one issue that came up about 2 hours after the notice was sent from the Wellfleet recycling group, and there was a request for information that came to us from the Wellfleet Recycling Committee. To read their email, they are promoting tap water access throughout town, and this is part of an effort to minimize the need for disposable water containers less than 1 gallon in size. So noble effort. They'd like to know, they had 2 specific questions for the committee. One, is there a go-to map or an app that cyclists use? I mean, I have an app on my phone. I think others of you have other apps probably as well, and I think we can be providing them with some input along those lines. Clearly, what they're interested in doing is identifying water sources along bike routes so that cyclists will know where they can refill their bottles and not necessarily be purchasing disposable plastic bottles. The other is how to best mark water station locations in Wellfleet, and they'd like our consideration of that question. I would move that we, I'm not preparing a formal motion at this point, but let's discuss it. I think that it would be, that this is something that would be good to have, say, one member of our committee take on to collect ideas and then provide a response, formulate a response back to the Wellfleet Recycling Committee. Any other comment? Everybody thinks that's okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's see if Ned thinks it's okay. Ned, I would move that you collect that information. I think you've probably got the most range of experience with the various apps, cycle apps. Would you be willing to pull that together?
Sure, I'll try. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. So my motion is that that Ned will go ahead and provide and collect an answer for the recycling committee and provide that answer back to the committee. To the recycling committee, that is.
I
So
second.
that's my motion, and I hear Christie second. All in favor?
I,
Great. I don't think we need to review this in our own meeting. Getting back, it was an informal request by the co-chairs of the recycling committee for information, and I think we can provide that pretty easily. Great. Moving on here, other business not reasonably anticipated. I would mention that, as we all are aware, the Department of Conservation and Recreation has initiated work on the rail trail extension in South Wellfleet. So I note that that work is going on and it has begun. And invite discussion of that work by the committee.
I just wanted to mention I happened to be walking down there and talked with the contractor in charge who confirmed what they're doing was the original plan, but I think a lot of people in town aren't aware. They're putting in a gravel road from LeCount to 4 houses down because those homes need an entranceway, vehicle access, and then the bike path will be right beside it, paved with a split rail fence between the two. So that is why it's so wide in that section. He also said that they're doing work up to the campground and they are indeed pausing at that location. So wanted to share that.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I've walked that length of that's under construction now, and spoke with some of the neighbors myself. Some of them have expressed great concern about DCR's efforts. DCR maintains it is pausing the rail trail at the campground. And this work is leading to the campground. Any other comments? Yes, Lance.
I've heard that there's some activity up on 6 in the where the parking lot was going to be, the Amsler property. What's the status on that?
I was approached by a member of the public with that question, and I checked with the town administrator and to ask who in the town government is in communication with the state on what activities they're undertaking. And the answer I got back was, we'll provide you a name and number at the state if you want to ask them questions. So long story short, the state, the contractor is preparing to demolish the buildings at that site, sought a permit to do so from the town, and the town said, that's state-owned land, you'll have to get the permit from the state. So that is apparently what's taking place, that the contractor, the state's contractor, is seeking the proper permits to demolish those buildings. Which
I'm confused. That's part of the DCR plan to put the bikeway there?
I share your interest in this because as you know, I emailed the select board and I've asked them this question. If DCR is clearing that lot to turn it into a parking lot, that was, of course, the source of public safety concern that led the select board, that led the town to pass Article 44 in the 2019 annual meeting, that ultimately led the select board to write to Governor Baker requesting that that work be paused while alternatives were considered, which is, of course, what we're doing. And then a letter written from the DCR commissioner to our select board saying that they would pause work at the campground and they would defer further study to the town of Wellfleet, again, which is what we're undertaking. So the fact that the state appears to have leapfrogged ahead to Route 6, which was, of course, the source of the concern, that property at Route 6, and is preparing to grade it, demolish the buildings, take the trees out, and turn it into a parking lot, should concern us all.
Yeah, because once they get that parking lot, that means they're moving on, you know.
Let's talk about what our committee can do then. Thoughts?
It's really confusing to understand how it's a lapse in communication. They're saying that they're not turning it into a parking lot though, but they are clearing it. So
Yeah, I think
what's
they're
going
saying
on?
that it's a staging ground for the work that they're doing on the other end.
They're that's one possible answer is that they're using it as a staging area for work back at the campground or proceeding to the campground. Let's face it, the work that they're doing is really at LeCount Hollow Road. So we're talking about the property that's close to Bay Sales Marine, which is how far up Route 6?
2 miles.
2 miles. Given the DCR commissioner's letter to the select board stating that he would pause work at the campground, given the fact that the select board letter, and Christy, I believe you have that. Can you post that up?
Mm-hmm.
The select board letter to the DCR commissioner requested that they pause all work and all planning beyond Old County Road.
Let's see. So this is the one that DCR sent to us. Is that the one that you want right now?
No, I was looking
To
for
the
the August letter from our select board,
Okay, here.
but thanks.
There
I'm
we
glad
go.
to see you have them both there. Okay. Yeah, the very bottom there. Therefore, we formally request DCR postpone any further construction and planning of the bike trail extension beyond Old County Road, also known as Old Kings Highway, due to public safety concerns. So let's go back to this was an August letter. Let's go to the September letter that the DCR commissioner wrote to our select board. DCR has elected to phase our project and only construct the rail trail extension from the LeCount Hollow Trailhead to DCR's Wellfleet Hollow Campground. We defer any feasibility studies to the town and other parties. We have placed the bottom of the third paragraph. As requested, we have placed those plans on hold for present. So again, the concern that the town had expressed, the safety concern that was expressed by the public, surrounded the construction of a parking lot at Route 6. When I asked the town about this, I received an email from the building inspector who confirmed that that is intended to be a parking lot for the bike trail.
Hey, Pete,
Yeah.
have you seen the,
So
have you seen the permit from the state to DCR for that activity and what it lists as the purpose?
From the state to DCR. Not sure I understand.
Okay, for DCR to be doing the clearing or at the Amsler area for the parking lot, they have to have a permission, a work permit, right, to do that?
Right. Well, they have to have a demolition permit, yes.
Okay, and that's not issued from the town, that's issued from the state.
Correct. And they don't have that yet, but they're
Okay.
seeking it.
Okay.
And that's based on word that came from our town building inspector and also from the contractor.
It's my understanding that there will be a field in that document that says the purpose of this activity is for what. And it would there show up whether it's to park their equipment or to be as a parking lot or whatever. If we could see that document as if it's been submitted, maybe we could see the document and see what their stated purpose is.
Sure. True.
really confusing. Yeah, I that is a smart idea, Lance. And what, yeah, so did you contact either of these people on this letter when you were in contact? And thank you, by the way, Pete, the thorough reaction you had in contacting people and reaching out as soon as you heard this is great. So who was the person who responded and responded a little bit evasively? Is that true?
No. I did try reaching this Paul Janigi, who was listed as the lead for the project when DCR briefed the town in March of 2020. And he was unavailable. And when I say he was unavailable, his office phone has a message that says he is not checking messages at that phone, and it gives his cell phone number. And when I called his cell phone, the message box was full and could not accept any messages. So I emailed him and requested that he contact me since his mailbox was full, and I have not heard from him. So at that point, then it was a case of as a citizen, not as a representative of the town government, approaching the contractors and asking some questions.
Yeah, 'cause this just sounds disingenuous to me that I think they want to build that parking lot, and once they get that parking lot, then they feel justified they're going to bring the trail out to the highway. And do they need to demolish all those buildings and start clearing everything out just to get their equipment there to do the work on the other end? Nah, I don't. I think we should try to contact them more directly and strenuously and just say, hey, we don't approve of what's going on. We want to have a more definitive answer as to what is happening in that parking lot area.
Well, again, when you say we, you mean the town of Wellfleet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I was gonna ask. What about the town administrator and the select board chair? How are they in the loop with this, and how are they feeling about this?
Well, I CC'd the committee on the email I sent to the select board and to the town administrator. I've received no reply from either the town administrator or the select board. Now, our role is that we're an advisory committee to the select board, looking at future bikeway plans, bikeway and walkway plans. We're aware of this issue because part of our charge is to study alternatives to DCR's original plan. The concern is that DCR is proceeding with their original plan despite the assurances to our own select board. How do we advise the select board? Should we be advising the select board? They're aware of the issue. One thing we can do is to provide them a note of our concern and a recommendation that they engage the DCR.
I think that's definitely a good plan, especially if we haven't heard back from the outreach that you did. I think,
Let me, other discussion?
Yeah, I agree with Christy there. I think we should,
yeah.
Okay.
Seems like there's even more we should do. I feel like this is so surprising, and we've been given a charge under really clear direction of what's going on. So this lack of transparency is really confusing.
Maybe we can formally.
I think if
request-
the building permit.
Well, would somebody like to make Rebecca, it sounded like you had a comment to make.
yeah.
And then I would invite somebody to make a specific motion.
Maybe we can formally request that the agencies are looping us in as they're taking each step and work in Wellfleet so that we're aware and maybe can not know after the fact.
Again, are you talking about our committee specifically, or are you talking about the town of Wellfleet? Because I think the town of Wellfleet definitely should be in the loop, and apparently is not. Any discussion?
Yeah, I think we should, as you say, I think we should just strongly send something to the select board, who then I think it's, more their charge to be on top of what's, I don't think it is. Again, we can advise, but I think we should strongly advise the select board that we're concerned with the activity going on at Amsler's.
Okay. Okay, here's what I move that we draft we'll email, but we'll send it from our committee address. I mean, we'll send it as a committee, that we draft a letter of concern to the select board immediately, expressing concern that DCR appears to be proceeding with their original plan, and requesting that they engage DCR to seek clarification that they are in fact not proceeding. Something to that effect. I mean, we'll draft it up and send it around to the committee, and we'll get inputs, but certainly in the interest of time, we're talking about what the intent of the letter would be here, and then the specific words will flow, but
I second that motion.
okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Right.
Again, as an advisory committee, I mean, we're certainly limited in our ability to reach out to a state agency on behalf of the town, but the select board, as the elected governing body of the town, has that is empowered that way, and the town administrator working for the select board as well. Okay. Any additional business? Any other comments? Okay. Thank you very much. And then, our meeting schedule. We were going to talk about this when we talked about the analysis plan. Adding one additional meeting to our schedule next week as a final review before we prepare to go to the select board. That will be the plan, and we'll put a meeting notice out. If the select board schedule changes, so obviously we will be presenting to them on a different date, but that's the plan. Okay. Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.